At what point does the brand step in and go, right, we're opening a lawsuit against you because...
The tension surrounding Matt Armstrong and Bugatti did not explode overnight. It built slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one crashed hypercar, one determined mechanic, and one global audience forced the entire luxury automotive world to confront an uncomfortable question: who really owns a car once the check clears? When a damaged Bugatti Chiron entered Matt Armstrong's workshop, it seemed like just another ambitious rebuild, the kind of project enthusiasts love and skeptics doubt. But this wasn't just any rebuild. This was a challenge to an ecosystem carefully engineered around exclusivity, control, and mystique. A $3 million machine, traditionally serviced only within tightly guarded networks, was suddenly sitting in an independent garage, surrounded by tools, cameras, and a mechanic unwilling to accept that ownership comes with invisible strings attached. From that moment forward, the stakes shifted. This was no longer about fixing carbon fiber and recalibrating sensors. This was about dismantling a narrative. For decades, Bugatti's identity has relied on more than engineering excellence. It thrives on aura, the belief that its vehicles are not merely cars, but mechanical art pieces that exist beyond ordinary comprehension. Ownership was supposed to feel like membership in an exclusive club, where access to service, parts, and knowledge remained tightly controlled. The logic was simple. Control reinforces prestige, and prestige justifies price. But Matt Armstrong's rebuild threatened to disrupt that balance. Every bolt removed, every component analyzed, every system explained chipped away at the illusion that only the manufacturer could understand its creation. Suddenly, the mystique wasn't disappearing, but it was becoming measurable. Viewers weren't just watching a rebuild. They were witnessing transparency. And transparency is something luxury brands often fear more than competition. The Bugatti's reaction reflected this fear. Reports of restricted parts access, refusals through official channels, and pressure applied behind the scenes created an impression that the company wasn't simply protecting standards, it was protecting control. To enthusiasts, this felt like gatekeeping. To observers, it looked like a corporation attempting to maintain authority over something already sold. And to Matt's growing audience, it became a narrative far larger than a single car. The rebuild transformed into a symbol of the right-to-repair movement, a debate spanning industries from electronics to agriculture. If someone spends millions on a vehicle, should they not choose who fixes it? Should proprietary software, exclusive supply chains, and restricted documentation override ownership? These questions, once whispered in forums, were now broadcast to millions. What made the situation especially volatile was Matt Armstrong's platform. His videos didn't just document progress, they documented resistance. Every denied part, every workaround, every engineering puzzle became part of a serialized story, and stories shape perception. Viewers began to see the rebuild as a David versus Goliath confrontation, an independent mechanic armed with skill and determination against a global luxury powerhouse defending its territory. This narrative resonated far beyond car enthusiasts. It reached consumers who recognized similar patterns in smartphones, watches, and high-end appliances. The broader message became clear. Ownership in the modern luxury world often comes with invisible limitations, and Matt Armstrong was exposing them in real time. Bugatti's concern, therefore, wasn't merely about one repaired Chiron. It was about precedent. If Matt successfully rebuilt a car outside official channels, it would demonstrate that expertise exists beyond manufacturer networks. It would show that independent technicians can handle complex systems once considered untouchable. It would challenge the notion that servicing must remain centralized. And perhaps most significantly, it would empower owners to question long-standing assumptions. When buyers begin asking why parts cost multiples of comparable components, why access is restricted, and why autonomy is limited, the entire business model faces scrutiny. Prestige alone cannot answer those questions. As the rebuild progressed, momentum shifted. Engineers offered insights. Specialists stepped forward. Workarounds emerged. Each solution weakened the argument that the project was impossible. The audience watched not just a car being rebuilt, but a barrier being dismantled. And with every update, Bugatti's carefully maintained aura faced a new test. The company could not easily intervene without amplifying the story. Silence, however, risked allowing the narrative to solidify. This strategic dilemma highlighted a modern reality. In the age of digital platforms, control over information is no longer guaranteed. Independent creators wield influence once reserved for media institutions. Their documentation becomes public record, their audience becomes community, and their project become movements. Ultimately, why Bugatti is suddenly worried about Matt Armstrong comes down to more than mechanics. It's about perception, authority, and the evolving meaning of ownership. A successful rebuild does not diminish the engineering brilliance of a Bugatti, but it does reshape the power dynamic between manufacturer and customer. It suggests that knowledge can be shared, that exclusivity can be questioned, and that transparency can coexist with prestige. As millions continue watching the project unfold, the outcome extends beyond one workshop. It represents a turning point where luxury brands must decide whether to embrace openness or reinforce control. Either way, the conversation has already changed, and the ripple effects will likely influence not just hypercars, but the entire landscape of high-end ownership. The story surrounding Matt Armstrong and Bugatti continues to unfold like a modern industrial drama, one that exposes a fragile balance between innovation, exclusivity, and ownership. What began as a single rebuild of a crashed Bugatti Chiron has evolved into a symbolic confrontation between traditional luxury control and the democratizing force of independent expertise. In the world Bugatti is carefully cultivated, every detail is orchestrated. From the purchase experience to servicing requirements, the brand operates within a tightly controlled ecosystem designed to preserve prestige and consistency. Owners are not merely customers, they are curated participants in an elite environment. But when a wrecked Chiron landed in Matt Armstrong's workshop, that carefully managed ecosystem was suddenly challenged. The car, legally owned by a private buyer, was no longer within Bugatti's protective bubble. It was exposed to independent analysis, unconventional problem-solving, and, most importantly, a global audience watching every step unfold. This visibility is what changed everything. In previous decades, a manufacturer could quietly refuse parts or discourage independent repairs without public scrutiny. The discussion would remain confined to industry insiders. But in this case, every obstacle became content. Every refusal became narrative. Every workaround became proof of possibility. Matt Armstrong's rebuild turned into a live demonstration that engineering knowledge does not belong exclusively to the original manufacturer. Viewers saw components dismantled, systems explained, and solutions developed. They witnessed the complexity, but they also saw that complexity could be understood. For Bugatti, whose brand partly depends on perception of unmatched and almost mystical engineering, this transparency introduces risk. The more the audience understands, the more they question why access must remain restricted. The financial dimension adds another layer of tension. Hypercars like the Chiron are not simply vehicles. They are statements of wealth and exclusivity. Their value is reinforced by controlled servicing, limited production, and tightly managed ownership experiences. If independent mechanics demonstrate the ability to repair these machines outside official networks, it weakens the argument that only the manufacturer can maintain them properly. This does not diminish the engineering itself, but it changes the economics surrounding ownership. Potential buyers begin to consider alternatives. Current owners begin to question service costs. The perception of exclusivity remains, but the dependency on the manufacturer diminishes. That shift, subtle as it may seem, carries long-term implications for the luxury automotive business model. Another critical factor is a broader right-to-repair conversation. Across industries, consumers are pushing back against restrictions that limit how they use products they own. From smartphones to tractors, the debate centers on access to parts, documentation, and software. Matt Armstrong's Bugatti rebuild inadvertently became a high-profile example of this movement. The stakes are amplified because of the price tag. When someone spends millions on a car, the expectation of control is even stronger. The public began asking, if ownership doesn't grant autonomy at this level, where does it apply? These questions extend far beyond Bugatti, touching every luxury brand that relies on controlled ecosystems. The rebuild thus transformed into a broader commentary on modern ownership. Equally significant is the role of digital influence. Matt Armstrong's platform gives him the ability to shape public perception in real time. His audience does not passively consume content. They participate in the narrative. They analyze updates, discuss solutions, and amplify the story across social media. This collective attention magnifies every development. For Bugatti, the challenge is not only technical but reputational. The company must balance protecting its brand with avoiding the appearance of suppressing independent initiative. In the digital era, perception can shift quickly. An attempt to maintain control can sometimes create unintended backlash. The rebuild, therefore, places Bugatti in a delicate position where every decision carries public consequences as the project progresses. The symbolic meaning continues to grow. The workshop becomes more than a repair space. It becomes a stage where traditional hierarchies are questioned. Each completed step demonstrates resilience and ingenuity. Each solved problem reinforces the idea that expertise exists beyond official channels. For viewers, the story becomes inspirational. It highlights determination, technical skill, and the power of persistence. For Bugatti, it underscores the need to adapt to a changing landscape where information flows freely and exclusivity must coexist with transparency. The company's concern is not about one repaired car, but about the precedent it sets. If this rebuild succeeds, it suggests that the boundaries of control are shifting. Ultimately, why Bugatti is suddenly worried about Matt Armstrong lies in convergence of several forces: transparency, digital influence, evolving ownership expectations, and the right to repair movement. The rebuild challenges long-standing assumptions about who holds authority over complex machines. It demonstrates that luxury does not automatically equate to impenetrability, and it reveals that modern audiences value openness as much as exclusivity. As the narrative continues, the outcome will resonate beyond a single hypercar. It will influence how luxury brands engage with independent expertise, how owners perceive their rights, and how the balance between control and collaboration evolves. The tension between tradition and change is playing out in real time, and the world is watching closely as one mechanic, one camera, and one ambitious rebuild reshape the conversation. The deeper this story unfolds, the clearer it becomes that the concern from Bugatti is not rooted in a single damaged car, but in what that car represents when placed in the hands of Matt Armstrong. A hypercar like the Bugatti Chiron is engineered to symbolize perfection, precision, and exclusivity. Every detail, from its quad-turbocharged W16 engine to its complex electronics, reinforces the idea that it exists in a class beyond conventional understanding. This perception is not accidental. It is carefully cultivated. Buyers are not just purchasing performance. They are buying into a narrative that the machine is so advanced, so rare, and so intricate that only the manufacturer can fully comprehend it. When Matt Armstrong began dismantling the Chiron in a modest workshop, documenting every step, that narrative encountered something it rarely faces: open examination. Each video peeled back another layer of mystery. Components once hidden behind glossy promotional imagery were now exposed on workbenches. Wiring looms were traced, structural elements inspected, and mechanical systems explained in plain language. The spectacle wasn't about diminishing the engineering. In many ways, it highlighted how impressive the car truly is. But it also demonstrated that brilliance does not equal inaccessibility. Skilled technicians, armed with patience and knowledge, can analyze even the most complex machinery. For Bugatti, this creates a paradox. The company benefits when people admire its engineering, yet widespread understanding reduces the aura of untouchability. The more viewers grasp how the Chiron functions, the less they accept the notion that only one network can maintain it. This shift in perception directly impacts the concept of ownership. Traditionally, purchasing a luxury hypercar meant entering a curated experience where the manufacturer retained significant influence over servicing, upgrades, and sometimes even resale. These controls reinforced quality but also ensured continued dependency. Matt Armstrong's rebuild challenges that structure. By sourcing solutions independently, he demonstrates that ownership could extend beyond official channels. This does not imply that manufacturer servicing lacks value, but it introduces choice. Choice, in turn, alters power dynamics. When owners realize alternatives exist, they gain leverage. That possibility alone can make any luxury brand cautious, because exclusivity thrives when options appear limited. Another layer of concern arises from visibility. In the past, disputes between manufacturers and independent technicians remained private. Today, the process unfolds publicly. Matt's audience witnesses every delay, every innovation, every workaround. This transparency transforms technical hurdles into narrative tension. Viewers feel invested, cheering when progress is made and questioning when obstacles arise. The rebuild becomes episodic, almost cinematic, with each installment adding momentum. For Bugatti, this continuous exposure amplifies the stakes. Silence may allow the story to grow. Intervention risks fueling it further. The company must navigate carefully, balancing brand protection with the awareness that any move will be interpreted by millions. The broader automotive community also plays a role. Engineers, mechanics, and enthusiasts observe the rebuild closely, analyzing decisions and discussing possibilities. Some contribute knowledge, others debate methodology, but all participate in expanding understanding. This collaborative environment contrasts with the closed ecosystem traditionally associated with hypercars. It highlights how collective expertise can rival centralized control. For Bugatti, whose reputation relies partly on being the sole authority over its vehicles, this collective scrutiny introduces uncertainty. If independent communities can support complex repairs, the argument for strict exclusivity weakens. Financial implications linger beneath the surface. Hypercars command extraordinary prices not only because of performance, but because of the entire ownership experience. Limited production, specialized servicing, and controlled access contribute to perceived value. If independent rebuild become normalized, that ecosystem evolves. Owners may still choose official service centers, but the decision becomes preference rather than necessity. Over time, this subtle change should influence how future buyers evaluate costs. They might consider maintenance flexibility alongside performance and prestige. For Bugatti, preserving the perception of indispensable expertise is therefore crucial. Emotionally, the narrative resonates because it embodies determination. Matt Armstrong's persistence, overcoming technical and logistical challenges, captures the imagination. The story is not about rebellion, but about curiosity and capability. It showcases the human drive to understand complex systems and push boundaries. Audiences connect with this spirit, seeing it as a celebration of ingenuity. For Bugatti, the challenge is not the rebuild itself, but the symbolism attached to it. The project represents independence, transparency, and the evolving relationship between creators and corporations. As the rebuild advances, each milestone reinforces the idea that exclusivity and accessibility can coexist. The Chiron remains extraordinary, yet it is no longer perceived as unreachable. This nuanced shift may be subtle, but its implications are profound. Luxury brands must adapt to a world where information flows freely and expertise is decentralized. Bugatti's concern reflects this transition. It is not fear of competition, but awareness that the rules of engagement are changing. The workshop, the camera, and the global audience together create a new environment where control is negotiated rather than assumed. Ultimately, the story of why Bugatti is suddenly worried about Matt Armstrong is a story about evolution. It captures a moment when tradition meets transparency, when exclusivity encounters curiosity, and when ownership is redefined in real time. The outcome will not erase the prestige of hypercars, but it will influence how they are perceived and maintained. As viewers continue to follow the rebuild, they witness more than mechanical restoration. They observe a transformation in how luxury technology interacts with independent expertise. The conversation sparked by this single project will likely echo across the industry, shaping expectations for years to come.